Okay, so here she is, Triumph 400X. I went up yesterday to fetch her from Gloucester. It's a bike I bought actually from Chester Triumph, completely motorcycles. I've got no skin in the game with them, but I've got to say that they were to deal with. They were very good to deal with, and they sent the bike down to Gloucester, and they would have dropped it all the way down to North Devon. So, yeah, if anybody wants a recommendation on a Triumph dealer, I would certainly recommend Triumph Chester or Completely Motorcycles Chester. But this is a bike I bought to add to my fleet of A2 bikes, which I will put some dates in the year so people can come down and ride these bikes back to back. So this and a Himalayan and a Vosges 300 Rally and a 452 Himalayan when that comes through, and a few other bikes. I mean, for me, who's very interested in this sort of end of the market, this 400cc capacity bike, this is a bit of gold dust really, and I think the headline figure for this bike is the fact that it came in at a really good price. I was sort of semi-curious, and then when it came in at 4695, I thought, wow, they're really keen to sell this bike and market this bike, which is actually quite unusual for a large manufacturer such as Triumph to do that, because we've seen from BMW with the 310 and with KTM with the 390, they sort of build these smaller bikes but then actually don't really try and sell them. Whereas with Triumph, they genuinely seem to be giving this bike a push, which is a great thing. For me, for example, I've never bought a Triumph, I've never been interested in Triumph, but this bike is something I've gone out, I bought with my own money, and I'm interested in it. I want to see how it goes, and I guess that's all part of it, isn't it? Attracting new customers to the brand. Just have a look what I've got. I mean, in terms of price, 5699. It sits sort of in comparison to the new Himalayan when that comes through. I've also compared it to a sort of a Fantic Caballero 500, which are a little bit more money and a little bit more left stream. You've also got the Husqvarna Fit Pillin, the 401, which is about the same price as this. And then the Honda CL500, which is, again is a bit of a left field choice. It's coming under the radar a little bit, but that's obviously offers a twin cylinder engine. It's about another £700-800, so it is more money. And I don't think it's going to be as light as and agile as this. So I think that probably would exclude that CL500 from a direct comparison with this. And then obviously we've got the original Himalayan and the KTM 390. So there's quite a bit of competition in this area. Looking around the bike, I tell you what, I'm impressed with its overall fit and finish. Yes, it's built in India, built by their partner company Bajaj. And it's interesting actually, Bajaj also produced a KTM 390 Adventure. Triumph has said that it shares no parts with the KTM 390 Adventure, but interestingly the CC and the bore and stroke for this engine is exactly the same as the new for 2024 increased power 390 KTM. So to me, if it's coming out of the same factory and it's got the same bore and stroke and the same cubic capacity, it more than likely has got some shared components. From what I read of this Triumph, it's got a little bit more low down, whether it's a change in the gearing, and that's what I would like to see from the KTM 390. That bike is quite revvy, it's quite demanding of the rider. It doesn't like to chug so much on the back streets, on the back roads. So if they've geared this down a little bit, and it's actually got a bit less peak power than the KTM, same torque, but maybe they've just tuned it for a bit more low down mid-range power, which I think is where this bike is going to be ridden. A few things I like about it: I like the USB charger against the headlight, that's a nice touch. I like that the fuel cap is hinged rather than just completely removable. I like the fact that you get a good C-spanner on the rear shock, which has got about a 10-way preload adjuster thing on it, dial on it, it does come, so check it does come on the softest setting. So if you are a heavier guy and you get on this thinking it's a bit soft, just bear in mind it probably is on its softest setting. So I put it up to about 6 on the rear preload. In terms of the rear shock, I've just spoke to John at Rally Raid, who's interested in this bike and maybe doing some suspension and wheel work for it. He said it's like the 310, it's got no linkage in it. So if you're looking at buying this bike and thinking maybe it's a bit tall and therefore you could lower it with a linkage, it hasn't got a linkage in it. It's a direct sort of chassis to swing arm bolt on, so you would have to actually change the shock out rather than the linkage. So just bearing that in mind if you are going to be looking to lower this bike. It is a relatively tall bike, I thought. It's an 835mm seat height, so if you've come off a Himalayan, you might actually find it's a little bit tall. And in terms of weight, I've just done it on my scales, and I think it was about 175 with half a tank full of fuel. So it is in line with their claimed figures. So it is lighter than a Himalayan, but obviously because it does sit a little bit tall and because there is that ground clearance, it does actually feel quite a bit of a weight to move around. So if you're thinking it's going to be a lot lighter than a Himalayan, I think you might be a touch disappointed. It is certainly lighter, but not It doesn't feel as light as a KTM 390 Adventure, for example, or a 310 GS. So the way it carries its weight does feel a little bit different. Things I don't like, it's been picked up on before. We've got the coolant reservoir down there underneath a plastic bash plate. So if you are going to be trail riding, you are going to need a reinforced bash plate so that doesn't crack and obviously lose all your fluid. But yeah, to be honest, that's about it. Obviously, we've got disposable tacky handguards, which is part of the course for any adventure bike. There's a few manufacturers who put good handguards on it. Standing position seems all right. I've been able to get the foot peg rubbers out without any problem. All I've done is roll the handlebars forwards a little bit because today I'm going to be taking it off-road. I want to see what it's like on the trails. Obviously, there's lots of people doing YouTube videos riding this bike on the street, taking out demo bikes, taking out their own bikes, which is great. You know, it's a great way of seeing what people think of this bike, but I kind of want to see what it's like as a trail bike rather than as a road bike, because I think it's pretty much a given as a road bike. Do you like the look of it? Yeah. Do you like the idea of 40 brake horsepower? And in many cases, it's going to tick every box. My experience of this engine, or let's say this engine from Baja, is that it's got good power. It's an enthusiastic engine, and I'm sure the suspension's up to dealing with the task of back road riding. So, as I say, from a road riding point of view, I'm sure it's going to be fine. But what's it like on the road, off the road, sorry, that's what I'm keen to see. And obviously, here in North Devon or here in England, our green lanes or our off-road, our trails are very different to what we've seen this bike ridden in, typically, say, in India or maybe what the guys in America are going to experience, where it's a lot drier and more compact. We get a lot of mud, a lot of slush, so it'll be interesting just to see how the bike works in that environment. Tyres are the Metzeler Karoo Street, so they're not an aggressive, knobbly tyre. So there's going to be a certain lack of grip. We've got a 140 section rear and a 100 on the front, which is quite a narrow gauge, which is quite nice. It should mean it'll go through the mud quite nicely. I don't know how much room there's going to be, clearance there's going to be under that front mud guard. If you wanted to put a knobbly on, that does look a little bit tight, so you might have to put a mud guard razor on, which I think there is a kit for sale I've seen. If you are going to fit a knobblier tyre. But other than that, I think it should go all right, to be honest. You know, these tyres, they've got the limit, but if you ride around them, you'll be able to do quite a bit of green laning on them. Obviously, you'd put better handguards on. My only other concern is probably these foot peg hangers. I guess it's cast. Is it cast aluminium? It has got a lot of leverage on that long point there, and I do think maybe if you go down heavy, certainly on a hard packed ground, you could very easily snap that lever off. This is all pressed steel, the levers, the brake and the gear levers, so that should bend back out. But yeah, these have been my only concerns. So whether going forward there's some better foot pegs for this bike for off-road riding. But I think all eyes are on this bike. I think early impressions from the Indian market who's had the bike is that there's been some problems. I've read of some stalling issues, which has been fixed by an ECU. I think it's always interesting when you read of stalling issues. It was a common one on the Himalayan, but in fairness, my observation is a lot of the time it was people not realising that they're on a single cylinder big engine, which takes a bit more clutch work. So I'm not saying there wasn't a stalling issue, but sometimes it was rider error, which people never like to admit, including myself. And the other one we've seen, you may as well talk about it, we've seen a snap swing arm pictures. Somebody who'd snapped a swing arm on a low mileage bike. They said it was a soft collision, a lot slow impact, and it snapped the swing arm. I think we've always got to be wary of that sort of early reports of things breaking, because A, you don't know how the bike's been ridden, you don't know what motive is behind that. I'm not saying there's an ulterior motive, but there's a lot at stake with the success of these bikes. And we saw with the Himalayan with the broken headstock, if there's things like that being circulated, it does do a hell of a lot of harm and damage to a bike's reputation, and that photo will get shared around forever. So I think we're going to take that sort of imagery with a bit of a pinch of salt, and then just keep an eye on it. Does it happen again? Is it a frequent issue? And then if it is, obviously, let's address it. Let's try to look at it. But I would, for the moment, not even think about that as a point of contestation in whether I bought one or not. But overall, £5,700. Have I got a lot of bike for my money? Yes, I think so. What does it sound like? Let's have a quick fire up. Sounds like a motorbike, doesn't it? I mean, people will go about probably fit aftermarket cans and all the other stuff, but I think as a stock bike, ticks a lot of boxes. So I'm going to get kitted up. I'm going to go and pick up James, the videographer. I'm going to do a separate video. I'm just going to hit some trails today. I'm going to get him to film the bike in action, which gives a better perspective rather than just GoPro. And then we're just going to see what it's like, see what we find really. All right, cheers, bye.